Hi, I am Queen Lily, and we have so much to talk about today because Donald Trump's files have been released by Jack Smith. The judge agreed to release his files from when the January 6th incident happened. It is so much going on. I have those documents. I'm going to read through some of them. I may not read the whole thing, but I'm going to try my best. But the main thing I want to do is read over the Mike Pence part when Donald Trump was trying to make Mike Pence do his dirty work. Mike Pence refused to do Donald Trump's dirty work. He knew in his heart what was wrong. Mike Pence knew in his heart that it was not right what Donald Trump was asking of him. So I'm going to read through the documents. Thank you for coming on my live. I am Queen Lily, and we are going over Donald Trump's files from the insurrection, January the 6th. You all, it is so deep. So many crimes that Donald Trump did January 6th because he wanted to interfere with the election and take over Joe Biden's presidency. Y'all, I'm going over those documents. I have those documents. Are you ready? Because Queen Lily is ready today. I made sure I wore my crown because I'm excited about going over these documents of Donald Trump's files from the insurrection January 6th. With the whole time he was trying to pressure Mike Pence to break the law. Mike Pence goes by the Constitution. He believes in our American Constitution. So let's get started. Hey, we're going to get this party started. I made sure I got it here on time because it's a lot. It's a lot we got to cover. So I'm gonna play this video first with Jack Smith. Jack Smith is doing the nation a favor. Jack Smith is helping America be greater. If you want to make America great again, stay on this live and listen to them documents, okay? We're going to listen to this young fella, Black Boot official. Then I'm going to read the official documents from the file from Donald Trump trying to convince Mike Pence to break the law, and he refused to because he is a real American patriot. But listen to this right quick, okay?
Winning the election just fell to absolute zero, patriots. And after seeing what was in that superseding indictment that was just unsealed about him on January 6th, I can understand why. Man, there's a whole lot more stuff in there than what we'd seen in the past, than what the public had seen in the past, y'all. It's over for him. I mean, this stuff's out there in the public now for people to see what he did, y'all. Listen, he made us look like fools this entire time. Out there standing up for him, saying that the election was stolen and all that stuff from him. It shows that he knew for a fact that the election wasn't stolen. He knew it the whole time. He knew it, y'all. And he did it anyway. It shows that he was trying everything he could to try to stay in the White House. And Mike Pence was telling him, look, you got to go, buddy. You got to go. It's over. He knew that he had lost all the court cases a month before he even done the whole come up here to Washington, D.C. It's going to be wild, y'all, and done the Stop the Steal rally and got us all up there. Got that one girl, her Ashley Babbitt booster shot, and about 1,600 of us locked up in jail and beat up like 140 cops and all that stuff, y'all. Turned us into a bunch of traitors, Trump did, y'all. We weren't patriots. He turned us into traitors because we weren't fighting for the country, y'all. We were fighting for Donald Trump. Think about what that looks like to everybody else that are real patriotic American people, y'all. Look at what we did for that man. And then turn around and find out he lied to us this entire time. It's all been a lie. Just like they call it, the big lie. That's what it is, the big lie. And he's still doing it, y'all. He's still, he won't allow people like J.D. Vance there on that debate stage. J.D. Vance wasn't allowed to say that Donald Trump lost that election, y'all. But he did, and that indictment shows it. That indictment shows it loud and clear. I mean, Mike Pence tried to tell him, look, hey, you know, you can always run for president again in 2020 and 2024. And he said, that's just too long. I can't wait that long. He told Mike Pence. He was kind of like Mike Pence was having to treat him like a little toddler, you know, that you come out of the Walmarts, they want to ride the carousel out front. You go ahead and put him on the carousel and let him ride, but you know what's going to happen when that ride ends. Sure enough, they throw them a big old temper tantrum and don't want to get off the ride, and they want to go again. But you got to take them off the ride. You can't just keep shoving money into it and letting them ride again. Mike Pence told him the ride was over. Donald Trump didn't want to get off the ride. So he lied to us, y'all. And now all this information's out there. I don't think anybody that calls themselves an American will be or should be voting for him, y'all. I'm not doing it. I can't make myself do it. And I don't think you should either. You shouldn't put yourself through this no more. Not for that man that lied to us continuously, made us look like fools, made us look like un-American fools. You know, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to me, and it should be embarrassing to every single one of you that we allowed this man to lie to us, and we went out there and did what we did in his name. Still doing it to this day, y'all, saying he's innocent. He's innocent. No, that indictment shows otherwise. It's chock full of information about the stuff he did. And hey, look, what also shows the stuff he's doing was private. It wasn't even done in the official capacity of the president, y'all. It was done private, which means that he don't have that immunity that he was asking for. He don't have no immunity on that because it was private. Because everybody around him, his attorneys, White House aides, the vice president was telling him it was over, that you lost, and you lost all of your court cases. The election is over. And he refused to listen. So he chose to come out there and lie to all of us and the rest of the American people about this election and try and destroy our democracy and overturn the will of the electorate. One of the biggest crimes anybody can commit in this country. So that indictment shows all of that stuff. And boy, I don't think that most people are going to want to vote for somebody who tried to make themselves a dictator. It's over, y'all. 0% chance of Donald Trump winning the election. We might as well get off the Trump train right now because that Trump train is off the tracks and plummeting off of a cliff. But hey, go read it yourself. It's out there for everybody to read. The only thing we can do is go out there and say, tell all of our Democrat friends and family members that we, pushed aside and tell them we're sorry and apologize to them for the acting like buttholes over the last 8 years or so towards them because they were right about that man the entire time. He lied to us, he played us, and he was getting ready to do it again. All right? So let's get our apologies together. Go apologize to them Democrats. And let's not vote for Donald Trump in this election. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if people like the Heritage Foundation right now aren't trying to figure out a way to get him off the ticket and replace him with J.D. Vance ASAP, because that's how toxic he is after this indictment was unsealed. Inmate Trump 2024.
Woo! Donald Trump, get off that ride. You no longer have any money to put in that ride. Donald Trump, get off that ride. Hey, it's over. Donald Trump will not win November the 5th. It is over. It is completely over. Finito. Donald Trump is done. Jack Smith and the judge released his documents. I'm going to show you in a moment. We're going to go over them, okay? But first, I want to show you a video of Donald Trump begging them to cheat for him for the election 2020, which President Joe Biden won. But listen carefully to this video, please. Please listen carefully because Donald Trump lost the election. Hey, Coed, what's up, kings and queens? Thank you for coming to my live, and may God continue to bless you all because we got blessed when those documents, that file was released. Listen to this. This is Donald Trump.
All right, I'm about to show you 2 phone calls Trump really doesn't want you to hear. And they are so embarrassing. I only have this first one due to a legal proceeding. You can actually hear how pathetic he is begging Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, to believe his election lies without any evidence.
I won this election by hundreds of thousands of votes. There's no way I lost Georgia. There's no way. We won by hundreds of thousands of votes. I'm just going by small numbers. When you add them up, they're many times the 11,000. But I won that state by hundreds of thousands of votes. Now, do you think it's possible that they shredded ballots in Fulton County? Because that's what the rumor is. And also that Dominion took out machines. That Dominion is really moving fast to get rid of their machinery.
Sounds legit. He literally says that his evidence is a rumor.
That's what the rumor is.
Now, ignore the fact that lies like this have cost people like Fox News millions and millions of dollars. This phone call goes on forever. And finally, the people from Georgia just say, like, bro, you gotta actually show evidence for any of this.
Did it? Oh, that I moved back in. You know, it doesn't sound like very normal. You mean they moved out, and what, they missed it so much that they wanted to move back in? Yeah, it's like, it's crazy.
Well, and they moved back in years ago. This was not like something just before the election. So there's something about that data it's just not accurate.
Well, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that it is certified, and they moved out of Georgia, and they voted. It didn't say they moved back in, Clayton, did it?
No, but I mean, we're looking at the voter registry. Again, if you have additional records, we've been asking for that. But you haven't shared any of that with us. You just keep saying you can.
A lot of it you don't need to be shared. I mean, to be honest.
Also, these are the droids you're looking for. Think about how pathetic what you just heard is. So there's the President of the United States, down by 11,000 votes, okay? And he obviously has like a roll of names, and he's like, well, this family, the Johnsons, may have moved at some point. Ipso facto, I get 11,001 votes. King me. Bear in mind, we still have one more Trump phone call I'm going to play you in a second. First, in that clip, he is arguing that he thinks a family has moved out of Georgia and is trying to vote in Georgia. Meanwhile, he himself moved out of Florida and was trying to vote in Florida. And all of this, he refuses to provide evidence of. And the key thing to focus on is he's trying to get election officials not to certify an election. That is a mandatory thing to do. It's not like discretionary or voluntary or like, do I feel like doing it today? Or am I friends with the person I think should win? Also, refusing to certify an election is like illegal in.
That is just the beginning of his scam. That's the beginning of Donald Trump trying to steal the election from President Joe Biden. That's just the beginning. He started with trying to steal votes. And what he put out on Twitter to manipulate the MAGA people is to put in their minds that President Joe Biden was trying to steal the election, where he stated that they stole the election. The whole time he was on the phone trying to steal votes from President Joe Biden. But then he's out on social media telling his followers that Joe Biden and VP Kamala Harris was trying to steal the election from him. That's what the devil does. He put out negative and lies. And Donald Trump lied so much. Let's get back to the video before we get to the documents.
We're lucky that Brad Raffensperger stood his ground. But that's not how luck works. Like, that's just the way it's supposed to be. We're America because people like Brad Raffensperger stand their ground. And that brings me to the next Trump phone call. This is Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump. Lara Trump? I shouldn't make fun of her name. I should make fun of the fact that she married Eric Trump. No offense, but gross. This is a recent robocall on behalf of Lara Trump where she is spreading lies about the upcoming election security.
We all know the problems. No photo IDs, unsecured ballot drop boxes, mass mailing of ballots, and voter rolls chock full of deceased people and non-citizens are just a few examples of the massive fraud that took place. If Democrats have their way, your vote could be canceled out by someone who isn't even an American citizen. And I'm sure you agree with Co-Chair Trump that we cannot allow the chaos and questions of the 2020 election to ever happen again.
What do you mean the chaos and questions? You mean the chaos and questions that you just conjured out of thin air? I love how the CNN host responds to it.
Just to be clear, obviously those things that she lists off, not the case.
And what's like crazy ironic, actually more evil than ironic, is that she and the GOP are like encouraging people actively to vote early. Also, Trump and pretty much every person in Congress has voted through the mail. This is stuff that they're currently saying is super sketchy, but they're doing it anyway because their goal is not election security. And I would say this if it was the Democrats doing the exact same thing. Their goal is to win. And instead of winning by coming up with policies that most people agree with, or a candidate that most people like, democracy stuff, they are actively chipping away and in many cases trying to absolutely destroy the fundamental underpinnings and infrastructure of our democracy. And here is the absolute timeline and how it works. First, Trump says that the election's going to be rigged.
We're competing in a rigged election. This is a rigged election, folks. I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do. You're sending out hundreds of millions of universal mail-in ballots. Hundreds of millions. Where are they going? Who are they being sent to? This is just a way they're trying to steal the election.
Then, after he loses, he doesn't provide any evidence that the election was corrupt. In fact, every legal challenge he had was basically just thrown out of court. But he kind of gives away the game the entire time, saying stuff like this.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
Yeah, I kind of think by legal votes, you just mean votes for you, and illegal votes, you mean votes for the other guy. And ever since he lost, he and his cronies are just trying to get rid of people like Brad Raffensperger, of people like the election officials in Nevada, where the Secretary of State and the Attorney General had to petition the Nevada Supreme Court to actually compel election officials in a certain county to follow the actual law of the state and certify the election results. Recently, this is not in 2020, this is in 2024. Why? Because Trump has all his people out there lying on his behalf and trying to impugn the integrity of people who are just doing the hard, thankless work of maintaining the peaceful transfer of power in the United States.
Gabe, I do not consider you an expert on this issue. As a matter of fact, I consider you a major.
Ooh, we're gonna get to the documents soon, okay? Because this man right here,
Fulton County, because that's what the rumor is, and also that Dominion.
this man would do anything to
Dominion
stay
really moving
in the
fast
Oval
to get rid of
Office,
their,
but he didn't win.
machinery.
And who is
So,
president
it
right now?
literally says that
Joe Biden is our president. That's who our president is. Joe Biden. Joe Biden won in 2020. But Donald Trump insisted on lying to you all that he was the winner. When you hear his voice saying, I need 11,000 more votes, I know I didn't lose in Georgia. He lost in Georgia. And he is setting up with the same plan for 2024 election. He is using the same rules he used in 2020. But right now, Donald Trump is who? Jack Smith's what? That's what he is. That's exactly what he is. So we're going to get started, you all, because we cannot allow Donald Trump to continue with his lies. It is destroying this country. And that we cannot have. We can't have that. You cannot destroy our country. No. Hold on. So we're going to get to the document. One moment. Just a moment. Give me just a moment, you all, okay? Bear with me, okay? Please hit the like button. I have 119 in my chat. I really need you all to hit the like button. I am trying to grow my channel. It would really mean a lot to me It is free to hit the like button. And if you want to support my channel, you can send super chats, super stickers, and you can either get a membership. It's just totally up to you, okay? It's loading. I got to give it a moment to load. Hold on. It's loading. But I'm going to read to you what MSNBC has stated. Jack Smith's unsealed redacted motion on Trump presidential immunity. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan on Wednesday granted special counsel Jack Smith motions to file a redacted motion urging against presidential immunity for Donald Trump in his federal election interference case in Washington. Smith filed his hefty 165-page redacted brief on the matter thereafter. The special counsel filed the brief under sealed last week after Chutkan sided with him on his request to file an oversized brief addressing the Supreme Court's July 1st immunity decision. Trump had opposed Smith's request to file the jumbo filing, but it was filed anyway. Although Donald Trump is highly upset about it, so it's taking a long time to load up on my iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all, discuss with you all what I know for a fact. Sorry for the interference. Ever since the hurricane happened here in Atlanta, Georgia, my internet has been acting up badly. Wires down, trees on houses, everything. But I'm going to make it happen. If you go to page 59 of the document, that's where it starts with the Mike Pence. Donald Trump went through so much to try to get Mike Pence to lie. He told Mike Pence that he was the one that had the power to make him the president, even though Mike Pence told him, I cannot do that. I don't have that power. The people have the power. The people have put in who they wanted for president. Donald Trump went on and on. He even met with attorneys. He even tried to talk to Mike Pence's attorney to convince Mike Pence to do his dirty work. But Mike Pence refused to do Donald Trump's dirty work. He wanted no part in this crime. He was not going to do it because Mike Pence is a man that believes in doing the right thing, and he does not believe in breaking the law to make somebody happen. He lives by the Constitution. Donald Trump called him numerous times, telling him, Mike Pence, do what's right. And what's right in Donald Trump's mind is to lie for him and break the law. That's what he wanted Mike Pence to do. And Mike Pence kept telling him, he kept talking like he was a 2-year-old. No, you have to accept you did not win. It is okay. You can always run again in 2024. Donald Trump refused to hear that. So what did he do? He went, this is in the documents. He went on Twitter and he said that Mike Pence is going to do the right thing. After Mike Pence has told Donald Trump, I cannot do that. The people have spoken. Donald Trump was not trying to hear that. So he kept putting the pressure on Mike Pence by going on Twitter, putting up things, turning the people against Mike Pence. He said, if Mike Pence don't do the right thing, oh, I'm going to be disappointed in him. He kept saying that. So because he felt in his heart Mike Pence wasn't going to do what he wanted, what did he do? He went out there, stood at that podium, encouraging his megabytes, mega followers to do what? Fight, fight, fight. That's the same thing he said when he was allegedly pow-powed at one of his rallies. Fight, fight. He told them, if you go to the state capitol, I'm going to be there with you. Man, he was not there with you. He never intended to go to the state capitol with you. He wasn't going to meet you there. He made you that promise and he broke it. Think about it. An honest man made you a promise. He's not honest. Mega. Donald Trump is not honest. He said he will be out there with you. He did not come out there with you. He was nowhere near you. He was asked numerous times to not encourage that. He encouraged you to do an insurrection. That is not somebody that care about you, Mega. Donald Trump doesn't care about you. You went up there, you broke the law, you committed so many crimes. You attacked police officers. You attacked people that work there. He encouraged you, and I believe in my heart that Margaret had something to do it. Marjorie Taylor Greene had a lot to do it. That's in my opinion, allegedly. Why was there a black bag there waiting for you all? It had to be an inside job. Somebody inside where Congress was had to set that up. Somebody did the work of Donald Trump that's a part of Congress. I watch the video of you all, MAGA, destroying the state capitol. That's unconstitutional. That does not make you a patriot of the United States. Doing the right thing make you a patriot of the United States. It make you a godly person, a truth, love, and care for this country. That is what patriotism is for this country, MAGA. What he asked of you is unconstitutional. And Donald Trump wants to do what? Destroy the Constitution. We can't have that. He told his people what to do to Mike Pence. They were going to tie Mike Pence up. But Mike Pence stuck to what he told Donald Trump. He knew in his heart what he was going to do. Mike Pence knew he was not going to do that. But what did MAGA do? They went there to attack Mike Pence. That's what they did. But it didn't work. It wasn't going to work. I'm going to play a video for you all. And then I got to find a certain mark time where the statement is made, okay? Just bear with me. I appreciate each and every last one of you beautiful kings and queens for coming on my live.
Supposed to debut.
I got to find the exact point where the comments are made. Hold on, bear with me. I appreciate each and every last one of you. Let me see what it says. Hold on.
Yeah. You said that.
One moment.
She did 10 softball Fox News Sean Hannity type style interviews. Going.
One moment, a commercial coming on now. But I want to let y'all hear something, okay? Bear with me.
I was at lunch and she's like, I need to know.
Like maybe one more time. Let's just try it one more time. Why not? Screw it.
Listen to this, please.
You told me a long time ago when I asked why you keep saying fake media.
Yeah.
You said to me, I say that I need to discredit you so that when you say negative things about me, no one will believe
I don't
you.
have to discredit you.
But that's what you told me.
You've discredited yourself.
You know, I didn't want to have this kind of angry.
Of course you did.
No, I didn't.
Of course you did.
No, I didn't.
Well,
It's crazy. Oh no. And people are going, why? Strategically, does Trump not want to do that? Because it would be like this. And he's even more diminished now. As terrible as this is, you can tell he is sharper. In a Trumpian kind of way. He's directly looking at her, making bogus but points. Saying things. He's not just repeating, they're coming from jails or coming from insane asylums. Hannibal Lecter. He's making points aggressively. And if you believe his lies, you would be thinking, yeah, nailed it. Yeah. But now, we've seen him. NABJ is the best example. If Leslie Stahl got another chance to do this, he would lose it. He would have brain glitches. His makeup would start melting off. Somehow, something. Nah, I'm not going to say that. Hair joke. Lately, I've been really fixated with his hair, I've noticed. Because his hair is better here, too. That's unimportant. But imagine this happened again, right before the election. You get why they canceled it. And I will say, it's stunning to watch Leslie Stahl have to baby him as the sitting president, the person who charge of the nukes, right? And Leslie is going, no, that's not how evidence works. Go down and look at the papers. It's not evidence. Bubby, stop. That's not how this works. And then here's where Trump stormed out.
No. Listen, your first statement to me. This is going to be tough questions.
Leslie, one second. This is the first warning. I think we have 5 minutes until we have the vice president step in. Is that all right?
Well, I think we had enough. We had enough of that.
I think we're ready for the vice president now.
I think we had enough of the interview here.
And then we'll cut over to the official feed. That was the leaked feed. Let's see here.
Okay, that's enough. Let's go. Let's go meet for 2 seconds, okay? Thanks. I'll see you in a little while. Thanks.
Be careful. We were scheduled to take a walk with the president around the White House grounds. I've got a lot of questions I didn't ask. While we waited to see if the president was coming back, his press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany.
Here it is. 2015, I'm going to have a great healthcare plan. Everyone's going to be covered. 2016, we're still working on it. It's complicated, Mark. There. 2017. Wait, now you're president. What's the healthcare plan?
He was discrediting the media to his followers. So when he would do something, y'all will always believe him. I'm going to take a sip of water, okay? Thank y'all for coming to my live. I am Queen Lily, and we are talking about who? Donald Trump. He is one of the candidates for the presidential election for 2024. This man has been caught up in so many lies. So I'm just laying out a roadmap to how we got to where we are now. And for some reason, I apologize to you all. For some reason, the documents are not opening up. I forward them to myself so I can do my show today. But it doesn't want to open up from the file from when Donald Trump got in trouble with Jack Smith, and that the judge allowed him to release the file of Donald Trump when he broke the law January 6th, trying to steal the election. But what did Donald Trump do? He went online and made his mega followers believe that he won the election, when we all knew he lost. And behind the scenes, he was manipulating everyone to lie with him that he has won the election, when we all know who won. President Joe Biden won. This is the first time something like this has ever happened to our nation. We are the United States. We are not the divided states. Donald Trump is all about chaos and division. And we can't have that, you all. This country is not about that. It's not about that. We must remember who we are. We are the United States of America.
I went to Dubai and found out that the rich.
One moment. I have another
but the secret of their
video for you all to play. It's Trump deranged attack caught on secret recording. This is exposing his lies. And how did we get to where we are? Please follow Legal AF. Subscribe.
But we're another pro-democracy channel at the intersection of law in collaboration with who else? The Midas Touch Network. Let's talk about the racism on display with Donald Trump. We got a new secret recording at an Arizona fundraiser where Donald Trump dropped the F-bomb among a bunch of millionaire and billionaires making jokes. I'm sure there weren't any black or brown people there, or if there were very few, in which he was cracking wise about people coming here. Here comes the racist tropes from the Congo, being let out of jails, murderers being let out of jails from Central and South America. And we got to get to the bottom of that. We got to control our borders. And then he said the quiet racist part out loud. He said that when they go and they interview people from coming out of the Congo, here we go, the killer Congo immigrant.
The reason why I'm playing this video, because what's the big topic right now? Donald Trump files were released from when he tried to steal the election from President Joe Biden. And what he's trying to talk about now to distract y'all is the borders. So this is why I'm playing this video, because he know that y'all got a problem with the borders. some reason y'all got a huge problem with the borders when Joe Biden and VP Kamala Harris has done so much to protect our country borders. No matter what Donald Trump put in your mind, Mega, it is the truth. They have done a lot for our borders. But I'm playing this because he's going to distract y'all by keep telling y'all they're not protecting our borders. They're bringing the RAPISTS over here, the unalivers and all of that. Donald Trump himself is just as dangerous as the people he claiming. Donald Trump and MAGA are terrorists.
Fundraiser, where Donald Trump dropped the F-bomb among a bunch of millionaire and billionaires making jokes. I'm sure there weren't any black or brown people there, or if there were very few, in which he was cracking wise about people coming here. Here comes the racist tropes from the Congo, being let out of jails, murderers being let out of jails from Central and South America, and we got to get to the bottom of that. We got to control our borders. And then he said the quiet racist part out loud. He said that when they go and they interview people from coming out of the Congo, here we go, the killer Congo immigrant trope. He would say, oh, they would ask them in an interview, where'd you come out of? And they'd say, prison. And they'd say, what were you in for? And they'd say, no, none of your effing business. I don't think that's true. I don't think during an immigration interview, people trying to get into this country are going to talk like that. Unless Donald Trump is misremembering and thinks it's a documentary, a movie like Scarface with Al Pacino, when he was being brought in during the boat lift, and when Fidel Castro did empty the jails of people, some of which had criminal records and are political prisoners as well, as they made their way to Miami. Other than that, the killer Congo immigrant, like the killer bees from 30 or 40 years ago, I never heard of. In fact, just putting aside the secretly recorded meeting to Donald Trump, you don't have that as many friends in the billionaire class as you thought. This one was it was a $250,000 to $500,000 plate dinner. It raised just $12 million, which sounds like a lot for the month of August, except Kamala Harris raised $50 million for the month of August. And so that one, it was being hosted by a couple of people that are big fundraisers for Donald Trump. And what the reality is, and it was
right now, Donald Trump is losing fundraisers and supporters. They no longer want to work with Donald Trump in this moment right now. I played that because I want y'all to know what his plan is, what he's doing to distract you all. But this is what's going on with Jack Smith, the one who has Donald Trump by his balls, who released those files. Yes. Hey, what a glorious day. Donald Trump going down.
And the Republicans win the Senate, is in trouble for an incumbent in the latest Florida Atlantic University poll, which shows a tie within the margin of error, with Rick Scott running at 47%, with likely voters, and Debbie Mucarsel-Powell running at 43%. $5.
If everyone
hold on a commercial, y'all. Sorry about that.
$5 to my race here in Florida, we would be able to retire Rick Scott. He has been self-funding his campaign all this time.
One moment, okay? Sorry about that. Thank you all for coming to my channel. Please hit the like button.
But whoever fills big places like this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So that's Donald Trump talking once again about his crowds. Oh, he seems pretty confident now. He's not only happy to see the people that are there, but he's happy for himself to be the sort of man that can pack a stadium like that. He's going to draw attention to how packed that stadium is. It's not, though. You probably suspected it's not. Take a look.
And who else can fill up? Only MAGA. But whoever fills big places like this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Everyone in that crowd knows that place is not filled up. It's not filled up.
This is a part of Donald Trump is in panic right now because Jack Smith released the files. So while he was at his rally yesterday, he didn't have anything to talk about. His mind is all over the place. He's distracted. So he's still talking about crowd size. He is unstable right now. He's in a place of panic and he doesn't know what to do. He's scared. He has went back to when he's 2 years old.
We've all been searching for. I just hope they can keep it in stock because there's no way.
And we have now had the House January 6th committee hearings. We had the initial special counsel election indictment, and now this updated factual proffer. What's new in here?
Good morning, Anna. As you said, we have all that information, but this is a 165-page document with new evidence that reads almost like a novel. And there's a lot of interesting new tidbits, including in the immediate aftermath of the election, even as the votes were being counted. There's testimony that Trump staffers were talking about concocting protests after the so-called Brooks Brothers riot that happened in 2000, and one is quoted as saying, make them riot. And then you have a Trump staffer testifying that Donald Trump himself was overheard telling family members, whether you win or lose, you have to fight like hell, suggesting that even if he knew he lost, he would still try to fight to stay in power, which is exactly what the special counsel says he did and broke the law by doing so. But the most interesting revelations really come around his interactions with Vice President Mike Pence, and they're based on 5 pages of contemporaneous notes that the January 6th committee, as far as we know, did not have access to, and that we've never really seen before. And it's absolutely fascinating. It portrays Mike Pence as trying to gently and gradually convince Donald Trump that he lost and that it would be okay to leave the White House and that they could consider it an intermission. He could run again. And then it shows that Trump turning against Pence when it became clear that Pence was not going to try to stop the certification on January 6th. And then it takes us right up to the moment when the rioters were pouring into the Capitol and Donald Trump was told that Mike Pence was in danger and told at one point that he had been evacuated to a secure location, and the aides were hoping that the president would order some kind of action to protect his vice president. And this document quotes Donald Trump as saying, so what?
So that's a lot alone, and it's just scratching the surface of what is in here. Vaughn, what are we hearing from Trump and his campaign? Have they disputed any of the facts of this filing?
No, not at this point. For the Trump campaign, I think you just turned attention to Donald Trump's social media. Literally just minutes after this filing was publicly released, Donald Trump, he began posting on his social media account saying in part that it's a falsehood and written unconstitutional J6 brief. Now, it's worth noting that Donald Trump, though, is not refuting any of the actual substance of what is inside of this document. He is not refuting that he put pressure on Vice President Pence or other Republican lawmakers like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, which is outlined inside of this filing. And it does not include any refuting of his conversations that he had with the likes of Ronna McDaniel, the RNC chairwoman, or with close ally Steve Bannon or other advisors to his campaign. At the same time, we expect, based off of a request from Trump's lawyers, they have sought from Judge Chutkan to have an additional 5 weeks added on for them to be able to respond with their own filing to the Jack Smith filing. So, of course, this all comes down to we don't expect much movement here before Election Day on this. But at this point in time, it's up to Donald Trump and his campaign to respond in kind. And instead of actually refuting specifics as part of this 160-page filing, Donald Trump is just outright dismissing it in its entirety in the mere basis that the indictment was brought against him.
Christy, the special counsel must prove that this case all involves private conduct, that it has nothing to do with then President Trump's official acts, right? So that was because of the Supreme Court's ruling. Based on this new filing, what you're reading here, does it look like Jack Smith's case is harder to prove?
No, I think based on what he has set forth here, he has set forth a lot of different categories of conduct that seem to be plainly private. He talks, for example, about Donald Trump's interactions with various state officials, and he paints a really dismal picture where Donald Trump is right in the center of it. He is out there not only trying to peddle all kinds of knowingly bogus election fraud claims, but when the various officials in these states say, no, that's not true, we're not going to overturn our elections, we're going to follow our process, Donald Trump then starts to, publicly attack them and retaliate against them. And it's numerous people, it's governors, it's House speakers, it's state legislatures. I mean, it's really striking to see. And it's, how in the world could the Supreme Court look at that kind of this bullying and
telling people not to do their jobs and say that is somehow within his presidential authority. The president has no authority to engage in what states do and how they certify their votes. So again, that's just one example, but there are many, many examples throughout this where Jack Smith really gets into the details and really paints a very clear picture as to why this is unofficial conduct.
Yeah, speaking of details, there's a lot of new detail in here about Donald Trump's pressure campaign against his then VP, Mike Pence. And the Supreme Court made it very hard for Trump's pressure campaign involving Mike Pence for that to be a part of this case, right? Private conversations between a president and a vice president. But Smith argues because the executive branch has no role in the certification proceeding, and indeed the president was purposely excluded from it by design, prosecuting the defendant for his corrupt efforts regarding Pence poses no danger to the executive branch's authority or functioning. Is getting the Pence interactions into the trial the highest bar for the special counsel to clear here, and how important is that to this case?
I think it is a very, very high bar, Anna, and I think that one of the things that
Donald Trump broke the law numerous times, and so many other people helped him break the law. That's what happened. He refused to hand over the presidency to the winner, President Joe Biden. Donald Trump doesn't care who he hurt. It's all about him winning. He doesn't care what crime he's going to commit. He didn't care if he was asking others to commit crimes for him to stay in the White House. That's what MAGA's leader did. Donald Trump knows he's in so much trouble, but he insists on continuing to break the law. He is a man that has 34 felonies. What do we expect? That foul did not surprise me because this man been a monster all of his life. He was taught the behaviors.
With the former vice president on the 6th of January, his former chief of staff, Mark Short. Mark, thank you so much for being with us this morning. You were in the room for so many of these incidents, including in this court filing. These are some of the.
This is somebody that worked for Donald Trump. I'm not going to call him president because he's not my president. He's never been my president. He witnessed Donald Trump's evil.
I think that the filing, from what I've read, is consistent with testimony that was offered and consistent with the way the events played out. And I think it's also candidly consistent with the way the vice president told it in his own memoir in his book.
Now, you spoke to the grand jury investigating Trump's efforts to overturn the election. Were there other key moments during that period that didn't make it into this special counsel's filing?
Well, I think that there's obviously a lot of focus on the day of January 6th. And I think that this was obviously an effort over several weeks. And I think that from my personal perspective, believe that once the Electoral College had acted on December 14th, that much of this would sort of dissipate. And I think when it didn't, it became clear that the focus would be on the vice president's actions on January 6th. And so those last few weeks were certainly more intense in deliberations between the president's office and the vice president's office. But I think there's some pieces that probably aren't told because they are probably considered to be at this point protected because of the Supreme Court ruling of official activities. In other words, I think there's probably a lot of Mark Meadows' testimony that is yet to be unearthed from this. Whereas I think you're looking at not wanting to trip over that potential disqualification. So much of what's released in this filing is things that are considered to be campaign activities. And again, I think that the president probably heard his case when he dismissed his own White House counsel from many of these conversations because the advice that Cipollone and Pat Philbin were giving were not consistent with where he wanted to go. So by relying specifically on outside counsel, I think it's harder to argue it was official activity when you especially, ask that your official counsel not be present for these conversations.
Yeah, how do you see it? I mean, do you see that these conversations that you were a part of there by witnessing the then vice president speaking to the president on that day, do you see those? Do you remember those conversations as being conversations between the executive office branch, or is it more conversations of a candidate speaking on a political way to his, running mate?
Well, as I'm not a constitutional lawyer, so I confess that. I think it's a gray area, to be honest, because I think that the vice president's role in presiding over that ceremony is a very official part of his responsibilities. But again, I think that many of the conversations that unfortunately the president was having, and I think being led to some of these conspiracy theories, was generated by outside counsel.
January the 6th, Mega's goal was to tie up Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi. I love Nancy Pelosi. And Mike Pence is an honorable man. Donald Trump even said in those documents that Jack Smith has and put out that he told Mike Pence he was too honest. I like that Mike Pence is too honest because he did the right thing and announced that President Joe Biden won in 2020. He did the right thing. What an honest man Mike Pence is. And how did y'all end up with J.D. Vance? Because Mike Pence is an honest man. And Donald Trump does not like an honest man. Donald Trump like a man that's going to lie for him. Mike Pence stood up for this country and he did the right thing. Mike Pence said that I'm going to be an honorable man for my country. And that is what he is. Donald Trump is not a patriot of the United States. Donald Trump is a terrorist to the United States because he broke the law so many times. Trying to steal an election is not honorable. It is not patriot to America. It is a crime. He committed so many crimes because what? He wanted to steal the election. He is not worthy to be president, nor is J.D. Vance. They are both horrible men, and they are not patriots of the United States of America. This country is the United States of America. It is not the division of America. This country was built for every race and culture. Accepted. It cannot just be about what Donald Trump wants. We will see VP Kamala Harris be crowned as President of the United States November the 5th. January, the day of Martin Luther King's birthday, she will be at the inauguration because she is our president. A new sheriff is in town, and that is VP Kamala Harris. Sit with it. Let it settle in your soul, MAGA. Let it settle in your soul, Donald Trump's followers, because we got a new sheriff in town, VP Kamala Harris. I'm grateful to sit this day, October the 4th, and celebrate VP Kamala Harris.
Former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney asking Americans to put patriotism ahead of partisanship. If people across Wisconsin are willing to do what Liz is doing, to stand up for the rule of law, for our democratic ideals, and the Constitution of the United States, then together I know we can chart a new way forward, not as members of any one party, but as Americans. All right, they're appearing in a red county, a county that voted by 25, 26 points for Trump both times. But it is a state, Wisconsin, that Harris has been gaining ground in, according to an updated analysis from the Cook Political Report. In fact, the majority of the 7 must-win states show Vice President Kamala Harris with a slight edge. And we had seen that. There had been sort of a trend back to Trump in some polling, and now back to where that trend had been. I want to bring in Amy Walter, publisher and editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report, with Amy Walter. So, Amy, let's talk about this new analysis. When you're going through these seven states, everything comes down to these. In almost every case, you show Harris with a slight edge. So what does her path to victory look like from what you're seeing now?
Here's a quick Hold on, it's a commercial. Sorry about that.
And make them disappear for good. Women are always asking.
Yeah, so this is polling that we've done in conjunction
with two good polling firms, one a Democratic firm, BSG, and another Republican firm, GS Strategy. They went into the field in mid-September looking at what voters are feeling, not just about the head-to-head race, whether they're going to vote for Trump, whether they're going to vote for Harris, but some underlying issues. What are the issues that are motivating these voters? Who do they see as better able to handle those issues? And what we noticed on the head-to-head numbers, Aaron, there wasn't much movement between August and now. Just very slightly on the edge, a point or two, not even a point or two, just basically a point, one way or the other. So the race is pretty steady. Yeah. But underneath it, as you pointed out, there has been some significant shift, specifically in the way that voters now see Harris's ability to handle the issue of inflation. Back in August, Trump had a 6-point advantage with those battleground state voters on that question. Today, they're even on that question. Even on immigration, an issue where Trump still has an advantage, it's now down to 9 points from 14 points earlier in August. And so I think that, you know, for Harris, that's some pretty good news here, is that on those issues where Trump's strongest, she's seen some movement. The challenge for Harris, though, still remains that when you look at undecided voters or those people who are softly leaning into maybe a third-party candidate, their number one concern is the economy, is inflation, and they do give Trump an advantage on that issue. The reason they're not voting for Donald Trump right now, they really don't like him, the way he behaves, or the you know, a lot about him as personal is what's keeping them right now from pulling the lever.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, there are those who had said, you know, that there are many other Republican candidates who this race might look very different if they were at the top of the ticket. But this is the ticket that the Republicans have. According to your analysis, Amy, you know, you're going through those states and showing Harris with that, you know, slight edge in almost every one of them, except for in Georgia. I was curious about that, looking at your analysis, which had flipped from where the candidates were in May, but he still has that slight advantage. What stands out about Trump?
Yeah. Well, listen, as you know, this is a very, very competitive state that Biden carried by only 11,000 votes last time. And the real key here is going to be turnout among Black voters, and whether what we're seeing in the polls right now, which is that Donald Trump is getting a bigger share of the African-American vote than he did in 2020, whether that's going to be able to hold those voters. Are they going to show up and vote for Donald Trump? Then that makes Harris's path very, very perilous.
All right, Amy, thank you very much.
Fresh off his vice presidential debate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was in Reading, Pennsylvania, stopping at a Puerto Rican-owned restaurant to boost support among the city's majority Latino population.
This thing's going to come down to our blue wall states. It's coming down to Pennsylvania. I come right through this restaurant.
At the same time, just 4 blocks away.
If you compare J.D. Vance to Tim Walz, there's no comparison. If you notice, when Tim Walz is out with the public, with the American people, they love him because he sticks to his policies that he truly believes in that will work for America. Compared to J.D. Vance, he had the speaking points of Donald Trump, and they both had the rhetoric of putting out lies. They never put out facts. Tim Walz sticks to the facts, and that's what matters the most. One moment, please. Just a moment, you guys. Thank you for staying on here with me. I appreciate you all.
Speak with someone who
Hold
was
on.
with the former vice president
Just a moment.
on the 6th of January.
I'm still trying to get the file to open for the 165-page Donald Trump file that Jack Smith released. For some reason it don't want to open. It's hurting my feelings. It's not opening. Hold on. I'm going to try to pull it up again, okay? Hopefully this works. Because this is breaking my heart that file does not want to open. That is strange because it was released to the public, and that's why, you know, I saved it. Let me drink a sip of water right quick, okay? Thank you all for coming to my live. I am Queen Lily. You all are valued. You all are kings and queens, and you are appreciated. Thank you so much. Terry Roberts, I see you in there. Thank you so much. I thank each and every last one of you all that's been with me for a while. Thank you. I haven't been doing this long, but I am so grateful to have you on my live. I got the documents to pull up now. And what does it say? It says, United States of America versus who? Donald J. Trump, the defendant. Case number, criminal number 23-CR-257. Look at there. Look what we got, America. I don't know why y'all be trying to put mojos on me in this chat. These Trump supporters, MAGA, stop with your nonsense because God always make a way. I am favored by Jesus Christ. And now I got the document to open up. The government motion for immunity determinations. The defendant asserts that he is immune for prosecution for his criminal scene overturned the 2020 presidential election because he claims it entailed official conduct. Not so. Although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was fundamentally a private one. Working with a team of private co-conspirators, the defendant acted as a candidate when he pursued multiple criminal means to disrupt through fraud and deceit. The government function by which voters are collected and counted. A function in which the defendant as president had no official role. In Trump versus United States, the Supreme Court held the presidents are immune for prosecution for certain official conduct, including the defendant's use of Justice Department and furtherance of his scheme, as was alleged in the original indictment, and remanded to this court to determine whether the remaining allegations against the defendant are immunized. The answer to that question is no. Again, the answer to that question is no. The motion provides a comprehensive account of defendant's private criminal conduct, sets forth the legal framework created by Trump for resolving immunity claims, applies that framework to establish that none of the defendant's charged conduct is immunized because it either was an unofficial or a presumptive immunity is rebutted, and request the relief of the government seeks, which is at bottom this. The court determined that the defendant must go for his private crimes as would any other citizen. Did you hear that? Stand trial as if he was any other citizen. He doesn't get immunity, MAGA. What you gonna do, cause another insurrection? This motion provides the framework for conducting the necessarily fact-bound immunity analysis required by the Supreme Court remand order, Trump. It proceeds in 4 parts. Section 1 provides a detailed statement of the case the government intends to prove at trial. This includes the conduct alleged in the superseding indictment, as well as other categories of evidence that the government intends to present in its case in chief. This detailed statement reflects the Supreme Court's ruling that presidential immunity contains an evidentiary component, which should be addressed at the outset of proceeding. Section 2 sets forth the legal principles governing claims of presidential immunity. It explains that for each category of conduct that the Supreme Court has not yet addressed. This court should first determine whether it is official or unofficial by analyzing the relevant content, form, and context to determine whether the defendant was acting in his official capacity or instead in his capacity as a candidate for re-election. Whether the defendant was acting as an office seeker, not office holder. No immunity attaches. For any conduct deemed official, the court should next determine whether the presumption of immunity is rebutted, which requires the government to show that applying a criminal prohibiting to that act would pose no dangers or of intrusion on the authority and functions of the executive branch, meaning Trump, quoting Nixon versus Fitzgerald. Section 3 then applies those legal principles to the defendant's conduct and establishes that nothing the government intends to present to the jury is protected by the presidential immunity. He's not protected. Although the defendant's discussions with the vice president about their official responsibilities qualified as official, the government rebuts the presumption of immunity, and all of the defendant's remaining conduct was unofficial. Your President Trump, his conduct was unofficial. As a consent form and context show, the defendant was acting in his capacity as a candidate for re-election and not in the capacity of president. In the alternative of any of this conduct, the government could rebut the presumption of immunity, and they did. Finally, Section 4 explains the relief of sought by the government and specifies the findings the court should make in a single order. Namely, that the defendant's conduct set forth in Section 1 is not immunized, and that as a result, the defendant must stand trial on the superseding indictment by Jack Smith. And the government is not prohibited at trial from using evidence of the conduct described in Section 1. Factual: when the defendant lost the 2020 presidential election, he resorted to crimes to try to stay in office with private conspirators. The defendant launched a series of increasingly desperate plans to overturn the legitimate election results in 7 states that he lost: Arizona, Georgia, my state, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico. His efforts included lying to the state officials in order to induce them to ignore the true vote count, manufacturing fraudulent electoral votes in the target states, attempting to enlist Vice President Michael R. Pence in his role as president of the Senate to obstruct Congress' certification of the election by using the defendant's fraudulent electoral votes when and all else had failed. On January 6, 2021, directing an angry crowd of supporters to the United States Capitol to obstruct the congressional certification. The through line of these efforts was deceit. The defendants and co-conspirators knowingly false claims of election fraud. They use these lies and furthermost of 3 conspiracies. Number 1, a conspiracy to interfere with the federal government function by which the nation collects and counts election results, which is set forth in the Constitution and the Electoral Count Act, the ECA. Second, a conspiracy to obstruct the official proceeding in which Congress certifies the legitimate results of the presidential election. And three, a conspiracy against the rights of millions of Americans to vote and have their votes counted. That's what who did? That's what Trump did. At its core, the defendant's scheme was a private criminal effort. Criminal effort, you hear that? In his capacity as a candidate, the defendant used deceit to target every state of the electoral process, which through the Constitution, ECA, and the state laws include the United States notification to the federal government of the section of their representatives, electors, based on the popular vote in the United States. The meeting of those electoral to cast their votes, consented with the popular vote, and Congress counting of the electorals votes at the certification proceeding. As set forth in detail below, the defendant worked with private conspirators, which is some of the citizens that went to jail as well, including private attorneys. And some of this is redacted, so it's a lot skipped over. And the private political operatives. And it's been redacted some more. The defendant also relied heavily on private agents, meaning MAGA, such as his campaign employees and volunteers, MAGA, like campaign manager, deputy campaign manager, senior campaign advisor, and campaign operatives. In this section, the government sets forth detailed facts supporting the charges against the defendant, Donald Trump, before addressing in the next session why none of his conduct is subject to immunity. Ha 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 ha. Under the Supreme Court's decision in Donald Trump, the conduct set forth below includes the defendant's information of the conspiracies leading up to and immediately following the 2020 presidential election. Certain information regarding his knowledge that there had not been outcome determined fraud in the election as he persistently claimed, and his increasingly desperate efforts to knowingly false claims of election fraud to disrupt the electoral process, we the people. Section, I represent the government efforts to provide court and defendant with all the categories of evidence they may offer in its case in chief at trial. It does not include citations to every potential exhibit, nor does it account for any additional evidence that may be developed before trial. I'm going to take a sip of water because it is a lot to read, you all. It's a lot to read. I'm going to skip over to the Mike Pence part, page 59, in just a moment, because that's what a meat and potatoes is, what Donald Trump tried to really do. And he wanted MAGA to tie up Mike Pence and noose him. The government does not consider any of the following conduct to be subject to immunity for the reasons set forth in Section 3. Formation of the conspiracies. Although his multiple conspiracies began after Election Day in 2020, the defendant laid the groundwork for his crimes well before then. Leading into the election, the defendant's private and campaign advisors included, has been redacted. Then a private citizen, redacted. The defendant's campaign manager informed him that it would be a close contest and that it was unlikely to finalize on election day. In that part, because of the time needed to process large numbers of mail-in ballots prompted the COVID pandemic, they also told the defendant that the initial returns on election night may be misled. That is, that he may take an early lead in the vote count that would diminish as mail-ins ballots were counted because his own supporters favored in-person voting, while supporters of his opponent, Joseph R. Biden, favored mail-in ballots. Privately, the defendant told advisors, including a redacted, campaign personnel redacted, a White House staffer and campaign volunteer, and redacted the vice president's chief of staff, that in such a scenario, he would severally declare victory before all ballots are counted and any winner was projected. Publicly, the defendant began to plant the seeds for that false declaration. In months leading up to the election, he refused to say whether he would accept the election results, insisted that he could lose the election only because of fraud falsely claimed in mail-in ballots were inherently fraudulent, asserted that only votes counted by election day were valid. For instance, in an interview on July 19, 2020, when asked repeatedly if he would accept results of the election, the defendant said he would have to see. And it depends. On July 30th, despite having voted by mail himself, earlier that year, the defendant suggested that widespread mail-in voting provided cause for delaying an election, tweeting, "With universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history." That's what he tweeted. "It will be a great embarrassment to the United States. Delay the election until people can properly secure and safely vote." That's what Donald Trump tweeted. And in an interview on August the 2nd, the defendant claimed without any basis that there is no way you can go through and mail-in vote without massive cheating, Donald Trump said. At the campaign event in Wisconsin on August the 17th, the defendant told his supporters, "The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged." Remember that. That's what Donald Trump said. It's the only way we're going to lose the election. So we have to be very careful. In his acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention on August 24th, the defendant said, meaning Donald Trump, "The only way they can take this election from us if this is a rigged election." And he's starting it again, this election 2024. On October the 27th, during remarks regarding his campaign, the defendant said it would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner were declared on November 3rd instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks, which is totally inappropriate. And I don't believe that that's by our laws. I don't believe that. So, we'll see what happens. The defendant, meaning Donald Trump, said this despite, or perhaps because, his private advisors had informed him that it was unlikely that the winner of the election would be declared on November the 3rd. By October 2020, a private political advisor who worked for the defendant's 2016 presidential campaign began to assist with the defendant, the re-election effort 3 days before Election Day. This described the defendant's plan to a private gathering of supporters. And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory. He was just going to steal the election. That was his plan, right? He's going to declare victory. That doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. After explaining that, Biden supporters favored voting by mail. Stated further, and so they are going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. That's what Trump said. He's going to declare himself as winner. Immediately following the election day on November 3rd, the defendant did exactly that. As his private and campaign advisors had predicted him to in certain states, the defendant took an early lead on Election Day to begin to erode. At approximately 11:20 p.m., Fox News projected Biden would prevail in the state of Arizona. In accordance to campaign advisor redacted, he and the defendant was shocked and angry that this developed. As of the election day turned November 4th, the contest was too close to project a winner, and in discussions about what the defendant should say publicly regarding the election, senior advisors suggested that the defendant should show restraint while counting continued. Two private advisors, however, advocated a different course, redacted their names, suggested that the defendant just declare victory. And about 2:20 a.m., the defendant gave televised remarks to a crowd of his campaign supporters in which he falsely claimed without evidence or specificity that had been fraud in the election and that he had won. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. This is what Trump's saying. We did win this election. In the immediate post-election period, while the defendant claimed fraud without proof, his private operatives sought to create chaos. Rather than seeing clarity at the polling places where states were continuing to tabulate votes. For example, November 4th, a campaign employee, agent, and conspirator of the defendant tried to sow confusion when the ongoing vote count at the TCF Center in Detroit, Michigan looked unfavorable for the defendant. There went a colleague at the TCF Center, redacted, we think a batch of votes heavily in Biden's favor is right, redacted, responded. Find a person it isn't. Give me options to file litigations, and even if it is. When the colleague suggested there was about to be unrest, remnants of the Brooks Brothers riot, a violent effort to stop the vote count in Florida after 2000 presidential election, responded, make them riot, do it. That's your defendant, Trump. The defendant's campaign operatives and supporters use similar tactics at other tabulation centers, including Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The defendant sometimes used the resulting confrontations to falsely claim that his election observers were being denied proper access, thus serving as a predicate to the defendant's claim that fraud must have occurred in the observer's absence. Contrary to the defendant's public claims of victory immediately following the election day, his advisors informed him that he would likely lose on November 7th in private campaign meeting that includes in the White House staffer, which came to observe as a conduit for information from the campaign to the defendant. Campaign staff told the defendant that he had only a slim chance of prevailing in the election, and any potential success was contingent on the defendants winning all ongoing vote counts to litigation in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Within a week of that assessment, on November 13th, the defendant's campaign conceded its litigation in Arizona, meaning that based on his campaign advisor's previous assessment, the defendant had lost the election. Again, I'm going to read this. Meaning that based on his campaign advisor's previous assessment, the defendant had lost the election. Who lost? Donald Trump. I'm going to skip a bunch of this because I got to get to page 59, y'all. It's imperative that you know what this criminal man, Donald Trump, the defendant, has done to our country. Let me skip to page 59. I got to get there. I gotta get there. I just gotta get to page 59. Donald Trump is a danger and a menace to society. He will destroy this country. He is a dictator. He wants to be who? Putin in America. We will not have a dictator in our country. We are Americans. We are not fools. We will not settle for Donald Trump's rhetoric. We are the Americans of the United States of America. We stand for what's right. And Donald Trump is not what? He's not what? He's not right for this country. He's an unfit man for this country. He caused so much harm in 2020 to many Americans. He tried to steal the election, and then he played on the Americans' mind and got on Twitter and was saying that Joe Biden was trying to steal the election from him. Oh my God, fix it, Jesus. Fix it, Jesus. We are the United States of America. We will not stand for this to happen in 2024 because he has been found guilty of these crimes of causing to fraud America in 2020. Okay, we at page 2. We're on page 59. Let me take a sip of water. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, because the American people need to know what Donald Trump is doing to our country. We are not the divided states. We are the United States. Supreme Court Justice, who 2 days early had cast this deciding vote in rejecting the defendant's election challenge in the state. As the group was leaving, the defendant spoke directly in private to, it's redacted, as late as early January, the conspirators attempted to keep the full nature of the fraud electoral plan secret. His secret was to steal the election and to make Mike Pence lie that he won. That's what it was. On January 3rd, for instance, in a private text exchange, wrote to, redacted, careful with your text on text groups. That's Donald Trump speaking. No reason to text things about the electors to anyone, redacted, and me. Redacted responded, K, meaning okay, and redacted followed up. I'm probably a bit paranoid, huh? Redacted wrote. A valuable trait. E, the defendant intended to persuade Pence to reject votes cast by duly appointed electors and choose the defendant's fraudulent ones. So much is redacted. That's why it sounds funny. As the defendant's various attempts to target the states failed. In the January 6th congressional certification approach, the defendant and his conspirators turned their attention to Pence, who, as president of the Senate, presided over the certification proceeding in service of a new plan to enlist Pence to use his role to fraudulently alter the election results as of January 6th. Certification proceeding. The defendant and his co-conspirators again used deceit. They lied to Pence, telling him that there was substantial election fraud and concealing their frustration of the plan to manufacture fraudulent electoral slates, as well as their intentions to use the fake slates to attempt to obstruct a congressional certification. And they lied to the public, falsely claiming that Pence had the authority during certification proceeding to reject electoral votes and send them back to the states, or overturning the election. And that Pence agreed he had these boundless powers. Pence did not agree because he isn't a true American patriot. With these lies, the defendant created the text tender box that he purposely ignited on January 6th. The defendant, meaning Donald Trump, first publicly turned his sights towards January 6th in the early morning hours of December 19th at 1:42 p.m. The defendant posted on Twitter a copy of a report falsely alleging fraud and wrote, "Statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 election. Big protests in December in DC on January 6th. Be there. We will be wowed when," he redacted, "learned about the tweet. He sent a link about it to another of the Wisconsin attorneys who had met with the defendant in the Oval Office on December the 16th and wrote, wow, based on 3 days ago, I think we have unique understanding of this." Later on December 19th, the defendant called Pence and told him of plans for a rally on January 6th and said that he thought it would be a big day and good to have lots of their supporters in town. Drafted with is redacted assistance outlined a plan for Pence to gavel the defendant as the winner of the election based on false claims that 7 states had transmitted dual slates of electors to the president of the Senate, who that is Mike Pence, and proposed that Pence announced that because of the ongoing disputes in 7 states, there are no electors that can be validly appointed in those states. Redacted emphasized concealment, writing that the main thing here was that Pence act without asking for permission, either from a vote, a joint section, or from the court. Memorandum stood in the stark contrast to concessions he had previously made about Pence's lack of authority in the certification proceeding. 2 months earlier, on October 11th, he had written to a colleague that neither the Constitution nor the ECA provided the vice president with the discretion with counting of electoral votes or permitting him to make determination on his own. And just one day earlier, on December 22nd, when asked by other private attorneys to provide views on a draft complaint that would, if filed, have raised the issue of vice president's authority, January 6th, had recommended that the complaint not be filed. He wrote that the risk of getting court ruling that Pence has no authority to reject Biden's certified ballots is very high. That he had no authority, meaning Pence had no authority to overrule that Joe Biden had won the election in 2020. On the evening of December 23rd, after shared and planned with the defendant publicly retweeted a document called Operations Pence Card, which, like memorandum, advocated that Pence Pence blocked the law certification of legitimate electoral votes. As on December 23rd, emailed asking to speak. The defendant to update him on our overall strategic thinking. The following day, December the 24th, day before Christmas, the defendant called the redacted name and they spoke for 40 minutes. Then on December the 25th, proposed in a text message that Pence permit an unlimited filibuster of the certification in violation of the ECA and ultimately gavel in as defended as president, meaning gavel in Donald Trump, which he did not win. We all know who won. When asked, is Pence really likely to be on board with us? Responded, let's keep this off text for now, because they didn't want it on record what they were doing. They was trying to steal the election from President Joe Biden. From that point on, the conspirators plotted to manipulate Pence. Worked in concert to enlist Pence to act unlawfully and to ratchet up public pressure from the defendant's support that he do so. The defendant began to directly and repeatedly pressure Pence. At the same time, he continued summoning his supporters to amass in Washington, D.C. on the day the congressional certification. On December 25th, when Pence called the defendant to wish him a Merry Christmas, the defendant raised a certification and told Pence that he had discretion in his role as president of the Senate. Pence emphatically responded, you know, I don't think I have the authority to change. The next day, the defendant tweeted, never give up. See everyone in DC on January the 6th. He told y'all, MAGA. He said, never give up. See everyone in December on January and in DC on January the 6th. He also tweeted false fraud claims. Time for Republican senators to step up and fight for the presidency, like the Democrats would do if. Sorry about that. My thing keeps freezing. I apologize. The Democrats had actually won. The proof is irrefutable. Massive late night mail-in ballots drops in swing states. Stuffing the ballot boxes on video. Double voters, dead voters, fake signatures. This is what Donald Trump's saying. Illegal immigrant voters. Banned Republican vote watchers. More votes than actually voters. And much more. The numbers are far greater than what is necessary to win the individual swing states and cannot even be contested. Counts are bad. And the FBI and Justice didn't do their jobs. And the United States election system looks like that of a third world country. You know, Donald Trump loves to say the third world country. Freedom of the press has been gone for a long time. It is fake news. And now we have big tech to deal with. But when it is all over, this period of time becomes just another ugly chapter in our country's history. We will win. That's what Donald Trump said. On December 28th, exchanged text messages in which expressed concern that government versus Pence, a law filed the day before, they asserted that Pence had discretion to choose electoral votes during the certification proceeding, would prompt a federal court to publicly reject. Thus preclude the plan that the conspirators were advancing in private. Thereafter, at 11 a.m. on January 1st, the defendant called Pence to berate him because he had learned that Pence had filed a brief opposing the relief assault in Goldman. When Pence explained, as he had before, that he did not believe that he had the power to, under the Constitution, to decide which votes to accept, the defendant told him that hundreds of thousands of people are going to hate your guts and people are going to think you're stupid, and berated him pointedly. You're too honest, Donald Trump told Pence. You're too honest, because he's a true patriot. That's what Pence is. Immediately before the call, the defendant had spoke separately to the redacted name from 10:06 a.m. to 10:14 a.m. In late that afternoon, the defendant spoke separately to redacted names, which is not here. So I'm gonna move on down because a lot has been redacted. But hours of the call, Pence, the defendant, reminded supporters to travel to Washington for the certification proceeding, tweeting, the big protest rally in Washington, D.C. will take place 11 a.m. on January 6th. Locational details to follow. Stop the steal, Donald Trump said. The next day, January 2nd, and appeared on podcast. When, name redacted, asked whether the January 6th certification would be a climatic battle, responded that a lot of that depends on the courage and the spine of individuals involved. The defendant spoke to the redacted name shortly after his appearance on the podcast. That afternoon, worked to arrange a meeting among the defendant and Pence in order to enlist Pence to misuse his role as president of the Senate at the certification proceeding. When redacted, text redacted about the meeting, redacted, who had just finished a phone call with the defendant, reiterated that the defendant wanted Pence briefed by redacted name immediately. Therefore, the defendant called Pence, informing him that he had to spend the day speaking to the Secretary of State, state legislators, and members of Congress. The defendant spoke with Georgia Secretary of State the same day. On that call with Pence, the defendant said he had learned that the United States Senator was going to propose a 10-day delay in certification proceeding and told Pence, you make that decision to delay the count for 10 days. The defendant then referred Pence to a redacted name for the first time and asked if Pence would meet with him. On January 3rd, the defendant told Pence that their certification proceeding, Pence had the absolute right to reject electoral votes and the ability to overturn the election. Pence responded that he had no such authority and that the federal appeals court had rejected a law making that claim the previous day. Then the defendant took to Twitter to again falsely claim that fraud had permitted the election. Sorry, but the number of votes in the swing states that we are talking about is very large and totally outcome determinative. Only the Democrats and some rhinos would dare dispute this, even though they know it is true. That was Trump's words. The same day, circulated a second memorandum that included a new plan under which, in violation of the ECA, the vice president would send the electoral slates to the state legislatures to determine which slate to count. The meeting had organized so that the defendant in redacted name could enlist Pence to reject Biden's legitimate electoral votes was scheduled late that afternoon, January the 4th. It's a lot to read. There's a lot of redactions, so it's going to sound a little crazy to you, but I'm reading what is here. In advance of the meeting, redacted, and redacted, gather at the Willard Hotel near the White House. And from there, redacted called and spoke with the defendant. It's so much redacted, I'm not even going to read that part. It's no use. When redacted arrived at the White House for the meeting, redacted confronted redacted about the legal basis for proposal. I need to take a sip of water, y'all. Sorry. Went line by line through second memo and conceded that no court would support it. In response, warned that pressing him admittedly unlawful plan would cause riots in the street. That's what Mike Pence said. Then spoke to the defendant, telling him that the theory that redacted name and others were promoting would not work. That's what Mike Pence said. And that had a knowledge that it was not going to work. The defendant responded, other people disagree, but did not identify those people. Also pointed, meaning Pence, also pointed out to the defendant that redacted name theory regarding strategic Democratic plan to subvert the election was inconsistent with other allegations that had been floating around about redacted and foreign interference. The meeting among the defendant, redact name, Pence, and Pence staffers, redact name, and redact name, redact, begun around 4:45 p.m. No one from the defendant's White House counsel office attended. During the meeting, the defendant asked redacted name to explain his plan to Pence. Redacted presented two options. Pence could literally decide objections to electors, or alternatively, in a plan that redact name had devised the prior day, Pence could send the electoral slate to the target states legislators to determine which electors' votes should be counted. In the defendant's presence, in response to Pence questioning, admitted that the ECA forbade that he proposed and that no one had tested new plan to send electoral slates to state legislators for review. Nonetheless, the defendant repeatedly expressed a preference that Pence reject valid elector slates. Throughout the meeting, the defendant repeatedly his knowingly false fraud claims as a purported basis for Pence to act illegally. Pence's 5 pages of contemporaneous notes from the meetings reflect that the defendant said, when there's fraud, the rules get changed. Bottom line, won every slate by 100,000 of votes. This whole thing is up to Mike Pence to do so with you. You can be bold and right to do whatever you want to do. That's what they're telling Pence. The meeting concludes with Pence, firm and clear, telling the defendant, I am not seeing this argument work. That was Mike Pence. Nonetheless, the defendant requests that Pence staff meet with redacted name again to discuss furthermore. Pence agreed to meet with him. The conspirators were undeterred. Immediately after leaving the White House, redacted name gathered with redacted name and redacted name back at the Willard Hotel. Over the days followed, these conspirators strategized on how Blank could influence Pence through the vice president's vice president's counsel in normalizing unlawful plan by discussing it on redacted podcasts. Meanwhile, the defendant continued to pressure Pence publicly. He did that through tweets, using social media to bully Pence. For his part, immediately upon leaving the meeting with Pence, the defendant traveled to Dalton, Georgia, to speak at a political rally at the invitation of the United States senators engaged in runoff elections there. During his political speech, the defendant, meaning Donald Trump, promoted many of the same falsehoods that he previously had been informed were untrue. He said, "They are not taking the White House. We're going to fight like hell. I'll tell you right now." And he remarked, "I hope Mike Pence comes through for us. I have to tell you, I hope our great vice president comes through for us." Of course, if he doesn't come through, I wouldn't like him quite as much. He also used the Dalton campaign speech as a call to action to his own supporters, telling the crowd that if you don't fight to save our country with everything you have, you're not going to have a country left. And he demanded that his supporters take action to prevent what he falsely called the outright stealing of elections, like they're going to try to do this with us. Emphasizing, we can't let that happen, meaning the American people. The next morning, January the 5th, and this get interesting, the defendant spoke on his phone with redacted name. Less than 2 hours later, on his podcast, redacted name, said in anticipation of January 6th certification proceeding, all hell is gonna break loose tomorrow. That's what was said on the podcast. Also, the morning of January 5th, the participant in the federal court hearing in Trump versus Kemp in Georgia lawsuit, redacted name, in which the defendant had signed a false verification days earlier, another crime. Redacted name on the defendant's behalf asked the federal court to decertify the presidential election in Georgia. He declared that the state legislature may choose the state's electors. During the hearing, the federal court denied the relief request. Immediately following the federal court's rejection of the legal bias for the conspirators' plan, went to the meeting that the defendant had requested that Pence staff, redacted take. At the offset, change his tack. Hold on, I gotta drink some water. It's a lot to read. My throat is dry. I gotta find where I stop. Changed his tack and advocated that Pence simply rejected the Biden electors outright. This was contrary to his primary recommendations the day before for Pence to send the slates to the state legislatures, but consistent with the preference that the defendant had expressed. Made additional concessions during the meeting. For example, agreed that the Supreme Court would unanimously reject his proposed action. Consistent historical practice since the founding was that Mike Pence never asserted authority to reject electors. No reasonable person would want the Constitution read that way because the office would never switch political parties. No state legislator appeared poised to try to change its electors. And if Democrats were to claim the same authority, would not credit it, expressed to it in this redacted, that the defendant's plan would result in distractual situation where the election might have to be decided in the streets. Having failed to enlist redacted in the criminal conspiracy, redacted told him that the team was going to be really disappointed. The team, in fact, was disappointed after redacted updated redacted on the meeting. Redacted confirmed to redacted that the Pence law, that is, redacted, was totally against us. Prompted to respond, F his lawyer. They said the other word, but I'm just going to say F his lawyer. That same day, received the email confirming what he already had admitted to. Redacted, no chamber, any legislator in any state, including Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, was requesting that its electoral votes be returned to the state for review. Meanwhile, redacted, who had traveled to Washington as directed by the defendant's public message, obtained duplicate originals of the fraudulent certificates signed by the defendant fraudulent electors in Michigan and Wisconsin, which they believed had not been delivered by mail to the president of the Senate or the archivist. Received these duplicates from campaign staff and surrogates who flew them to Washington at private expense. Then, when hand-delivered to them, staffers for the U.S. representatives at state capitol as part of a plan to deliver them to Pence for use in certification proceedings. Thank you. If you'd like to support my channel, you can send super chats or become a member. Anything you give is appreciated. Thank you so much for staying in this live with me. It's a lot to read and it's a lot redacted. So that's why it may sound a little funny, but bear with me. I appreciate all of you beautiful kings and queens. Send me a super chat. Let me know I'm doing a good job because it's so much redacted and my tongue is wore out. Hang in there with me. The defendant did not lead the pressure campaign to his co-conspirators. He redoubled his own efforts on January 5th at 11:06 a.m. Shortly before meeting with the defendant, tweeted, "The vice president has the power to reject fraudulent chosen electors and designate the defendant as the winner of the Electoral College vote." That afternoon, the defendant met privately with Mike Pence in the Oval Office. During the meeting, the defendant once again told Pence, "I think you have the power to decertify." When Pence was unmoved, the defendant threatened to criticize him publicly. He said, "I'm gonna have to say you did a great disservice." This concern to whom Pence had relied the defendant's threat to the point that he alerted Pence Secret Service detail. Next, still, the defendant initiated a phone call with Pence. Redacted, and one or two other private attorneys likely included, and again raised a scenario of Vice President Pence sending the electoral slates to state legislatures. Again, pointed out that such a strategy violated the ECA, and Pence reaffirmed that he did not believe he had the authority to do so. Pence refused to break the law. Shortly after that call, that evening at 5:43 p.m., the defendant, Donald Trump, tweeted, "I will be speaking at the Save America rally tomorrow on the something redacted at 11 a.m. Eastern. Arrived early. Doors open at 7 a.m. Eastern. Big crowds." That's what Donald Trump said. The defendant discontinued his pressure campaign on Pence The defendant continued his pressure campaign on Pence that evening. After a New York Times article that night detailed that the afternoon's private conversations in which Pence had rejected the defendant's demand to act unlawfully. The defendant directed to issue a statement, rebutted it, and approved the statement at 9:28 p.m. Minutes later, the defendant called Pence and told him, "You got to be tough tomorrow." After that concluded, the call with Pence, the defendant subsequently spoke to the redacted name, followed by redacted. Then around 10 p.m. that night, the defendant issued the public statement, which read, "The vice president and I are in total agreement, and that Vice President Pence had the power to act." A statement that the defendant knew was a lie from Pence. Repeated and firm rejections of his efforts, but that gave false hope to the defendant's supporters arriving in the city at the defendant's request, maximizing the pressure of Pence. One moment. Thank you for the super chat. The defendant caused unlawful conduct on January 6th and tried to take advantage of the riot that ensued. The defendant continued his intense pressure campaign against Mike Pence until the early morning, January 6th. Around 1 a.m., the defendant tweeted falsely, "If Vice President Mike Pence," he tagged Mike Pence, "comes through for us, we will win the presidency." Many states want to decertify the mistake they made in certifying incorrect and even fraudulent numbers and process, not approved by their state legislators, which it must be. Mike can send it back at 8:17 a.m. as the supporters had summoned to the city gathered near the White House. The defendant again falsely tweeted about the certification. Stated, states want to correct their votes, which they now know were based on irregularities and fraud, plus corrupt process never received legislative approval. All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we will win. Do it, Mike. Make this a time for extreme courage. Later that morning, worked with another attorney for the defendant who contacted the U.S. Senator to ask him to obtain the fraudulent Wisconsin and Michigan documents from the U.S. Representative's office and hand-delivered them to Mike Pence. When one of the U.S. Senator's staffers contact a Pence staffer by text message to arrange for this delivery of what the U.S. Senator staffer had been told were of electors because the didn't receive them, Pence staffer rejects them. At 11:15 a.m., shortly before traveling to speak to his supporters, the defendant called Pence and made one last attempt to induce him to act unlawfully in the upcoming sessions. When Pence again refused and told the defendant that he intended to make a statement to Congress before the certification proceeding, confirming that he lacked the authority to do what the defendant wanted. The defendant insists. He decided to reinsert into his campaign speech at the ellipse remarks, targeting Pence for his refusal to misuse his role in the certification. And the defendant set into motion the last plan in furtherance of his conspiracies. If Pence would not do as he was asked, the defendant needed to find another way to prevent the certification of Biden presidency. So on January 6th, the defendant sent to the Capitol a crowd of angry supporters who the defendant had called to the city and inundated with false claims of an outcome determinative election fraud to induce Pence to certify the legitimate electoral votes and to obstruct the certification. Campaign rally and spoke just before the defendant. In his rally speech, sought to cloak the conspiracies in an air of legitimacy, assuring the defendant's supporters that every single thing that has been outlined as the plan for today is perfectly legal. That's what Donald Trump said. In introducing as a preeminent constitutional scholar who would further explain this plan. His constitutional scholar would further explain his plan. He falsely claimed that legislators in 5 states were begging to have their electoral ballots returned, and then asserted that Pence could decide the validity of those crooked ballots, and took the crowd and told the crowd, "Let's have trial by combat," Donald Trump said. In his speech, he claimed that Pence must send the electoral votes to state legislators for the American people to know whether we have control of the direction of our government or not. And he decried that no longer live in a self-governed republic if we can't get the answer to this question. When the defendant took the stage of the ellipse rally to speak to the supporters he had gathered there, at his argument, he knew that Pence had refused once and for all to use the defendant's fraudulent electoral certificates. The defendant also knew that he had only one last hope to prevent Biden's certification as president. The large and angry crowd standing in front of him. So, for more than an hour, the defendant delivered a speech designed to inflame his supporters and motivate them to march to the Capitol. The defendant told his crowd many of the same lies he had been telling for months, publicly, privately, including the officials in the target states, and that he knew were not true. In Arizona, he claimed more than 36,000 ballots had been cast by non-citizens. Regarding Georgia, the defendant repeated the falsehood that more than 10,300 dead people voted, and he raised the public disapproving claims about fraud by election workers at State Farm Arena. He made baseless allegations of death voters in Nevada and Michigan, and false claims about illegal counted votes in Wisconsin. And in Pennsylvania, he claimed that there were hundreds of thousands more ballots not counted. There had been voters. The defendant also lied to his rally supporters when he claimed that certain states wanted to reconsider or recertify their duly appointed electors. For instance, he said, by the way, Pennsylvania has now seen all of this. They didn't know because it was so quick. They had a vote. They voted. But now they all see this stuff, and it's all come to light. Doesn't happen that fast, and they want to recertify their votes. They want to recertify. But the only way that can happen if Mike Pence agrees to send it back. Mike Pence has to agree to send it back. In response to this lie about Pennsylvania, the defendant's crowds began to chant, "Send it back." This is mega. Send it back. Send it back. That's what his supporters said. The defendant gave his supporters false hope that Pence would take action to change the results of the election and claimed that Pence had the authority to do so. He falsely told the crowd that Pence could still do the right thing, that halt the certification, and he extemporized lines about Pence, the vice president, through the speech, including the indirect threat. Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of the Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I would tell you right now, I'm not hearing good stories. That's what Donald Trump said to Mike Pence during the rally speech. The defendant galvanized his supporters by painting the stakes as critical and assuring them that history was going to be made. He made clear that he expected his supporters to take action, telling them regarding his loss of the election that we're not going to let that happen, calling them to fight and to take back our country, their country through strength, while suggesting that the legal means were inadequate and insufficient to remedy that purported fraud. Because you catch somebody in the fraud, you're going to allow them to go by very different rules. Throughout the speech, from as early as about 15 minutes into it, twice in his final lines, the defendant Donald Trump directed his supporters to go to the Capitol and suggested that he will go with them. That's what Donald Trump said. The overall impact of the defendant's speech, particularly in light of months of statements and tweets falsely claiming election fraud and following the heels of, in his speech, was to fuel the crowd's anger for insisting that when the defendant told his supporters that we'll not let them silence their voices, we're not going to let it happen. The crowd chanted, "Fight for Trump" in response. When the defendant soon later told his supporters that we're going to walk down to the Capitol and that we would never take back our country with weakness, and that they had to show strength and they had to be strong. Members of the crowd shouted, "Invade the Capitol building! Invade the Capitol building and take our Capitol." Thousands of the defendant's supporters obeyed his disrupted and marched to the Capitol, where the certification proceedings began around 1 p.m. Minutes earlier, Pence had issued a public statement and explained that his role as the president of the Senate did not include unalienable authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted, which should not. And on the floor of the House of Representatives, Mike Pence opened the certificates of the vote and certified of assertment from Arizona, consistent with the ECA. After an objection from the senator and representative of the House and Senate retired to their separate chambers to debate it. Outside the Capitol building, a mass of people, including those who had traveled to Washington and the Capitol at the defendant's direction, broke through the barriers, cordoning off the Capitol grounds and advanced on the building. Amongst these who had attended the defendant's speech from Washington Monument, marched with the crowd to the Capitol and breached the restricted area surrounding the building. A large portion of the crowds at the Capitol, including rioters who violently attacked law enforcement officers to secure the building, wore clothing and carried items bearing the defendant's name, campaign slogans, leaving no doubt that they were on his behalf and at his direction. Beginning at 1:30 p.m., the defendant settled in the dining room of the Oval Office. He spent the afternoon there reviewing Twitter on his phone. While in the dining room, television played. While the dining room television played Fox News, contemporaneous coverage of events at the Capitol. At 2:13 p.m., the crowd at the Capitol broke into the building and forced the Senate to recess. Within minutes after staffs fled the Senate chambers carrying legitimate electorals, physical certificates of vote, and certificates of ascertainment. Next to the Senate chamber, a group of rioters chased the U.S. Senate police officer up a flight of stairs with 40 feet where Pence was sheltering with his family. Oh my God. As they did so, the rioters shouted at the officers in search of public officials. Where the fuck they are, where the fuck they are, where the fuck the counting votes at? Why are you protecting them? You're fucking traitors. On the other side of the Capitol, the House was also forced to recess. Fox News covered these events at the Capitol, including about 2:12 p.m. Reports of the Capitol building on lockdown and showed video footage of the large crowds in the restricted area surrounding the Capitol. Much of the crowd was wearing clothing and carrying flags, evidencing their allegiance to the defendant. At about 2:20 p.m., the video of crowds at the at the Capitol lawn in West Terrace was shown alongside Tyron stating, certifications vote paused as protest eruption on Capitol Hill. At 2:21 p.m., on the street reported interviewed an individual marching from where Donald Trump had his rally to the Capitol, who claimed to have come to Washington because President Trump told us we must do something. We had something big to look forward to. And I believe that the Vice President Pence was going to certify the electoral votes and or not certify them. But I guess that's just change, correct? And it's a very big disappointment. I think there's several 100,000 people here who are very disappointed. But I still believe President Trump has something else left. At the approximately 2:24 p.m., Fox News reported that the police officer may have been injured and that the protesters had made their way inside the Capitol. At 2:24 p.m., Trump was alone in his dining room when he issued a tweet attacking Pence and fueling the ongoing riot. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts and not the fraudulent and inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. That afternoon, at the state capitol, rioters used a bullhorn to read the defendant's tweet about Vice President aloud and tried to gain entry into the building. It is so much to read, y'all. My tongue is tired. I'm just going to continue just talking about, we all knew what happened. My voice is hurting. My throat hurts right now for reading so much of those fouls from Jack Smith. Y'all, we all know what happened. MAGA, the Trump supporters, destroyed the Capitol. Their plan was to nuke Vice President Pence They did not succeed. Mike Pence certified Joe Biden as our president on January 6th. To this day, Donald Trump will not admit he lost the election to President Joe Biden. Some of those people that did crimes January 6th have been prosecuted. And a lady yesterday received her sentencing for 9 years for doing crimes to help Trump stop our vote for President Joe Biden. You all, it is so much to read. I am going to put the link to this on my community wall. It's so much to read. It's 165 pages of Donald Trump's crimes. Donald Trump is not an honorable man. Mike Pence is an honorable man. He knew in his heart it was wrong to steal the election. He was not going to do Donald Trump's dirty work. Although MAGA did his dirty work, although a vast majority of the Republicans did Donald Trump's dirty work, Mike Pence refused to be a dishonest man. Donald Trump is a dishonest man. He did not win the election in 2020. Donald Trump has plans to steal the election for 2024. This man is a criminal. He is not a good man. He is not an honorable man. He is not a patriot of the United States. Donald Trump has 34 felonies. He goes to court on November 26th for all of this. He will be found guilty. He will not win the election November 5th. We will have our first female president, our first Black female president, November the 5th. If you like to donate to my channel, you could send me super chats and super stickers, or you could purchase a membership. I thank each and every last one of y'all for hanging in there with me. I have been live now over some hours probably, but I thank each and every last one of you. Thank you, Terry Roberts. Thank you, LaSwan. Thank you, Caleb Hart, for staying on here with me. Thank you. Thank you, Bianca Edwards. Thank you. I will put the link for y'all to go read this redacted information from Jack Smith. I am so tired from reading this, y'all. I could barely talk right now. And I have my air conditioner on and the vent is over my head. My throat hurt. I'm losing my voice. Thank you all for supporting me. It means so much to me. And I don't know at this point. I'm going to try to figure out who sent me the super chat. I lost my voice. I'm sorry, y'all. Terry Roberts said, don't worry about what Miss Queen Lily does. If you don't like, if you don't like it, you can leave. Amen. Terry Roberts, thank you for all the beautiful hearts you sent me. I had to keep licking the inside of my mouth. I don't know how to say your name, Lisa Callie, because I was reading so much, my mouth became dry, and I only have a little bit of water left, like a drop of water. My mouth was getting dry. I've been reading for a long time. Tim Jackson said, oh, little sister, I hope you get to see your niece. My niece will be bowing to God because I'm praying for this election that the right thing is done. Because we will have a female president. VP Kamala Harris will be the first woman president. What a beautiful time to be alive. I am so grateful to God. And you know what Jimmy Carter said? He prayed to God that he will be alive to see the first female president. He said he prayed to God that he will be alive to see VP Kamala Harris be president. And it's happening. We have 31 days before November 5th. Might as well say we have 30 days now because it's what, 7:25 Eastern? What a time to be alive. The truth has been revealed about Donald Trump crimes. The truth has been revealed what he did to try to steal this election. And I pray for the ones that was putting out lies, saying that Joe Biden tried to steal the election. I know many people. I know some of them. They kept saying that Donald Trump won, that Joe Biden stole the election. And it has been proven that they all lied. I pray for your souls that you continue to put out misinformation. Dear God, what a time to be alive. We're going to have our first female president, y'all. Celebrate it with me. Hey, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Who gonna win? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. They gonna win. Yes, they will. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Who gonna win? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Yes, God. Woo, we're gonna have our first female president. Thank you, Jesus. I appreciate each and every last one of you all. Please hit that like button before you leave out. I had hundreds of people here today, and I only got 29 likes. Y'all are breaking my achy, breaky heart. Don't break my heart, my achy, breaky heart. Please hit that like button before you leave up out of here. Your girl read you pages of the indictment. I knew I would not be able to read all 165 pages, but I wanted to try to read as much as I can to you all. Thank you for supporting me. I will put the link in the community on my community page so you can read it yourself. It's going to take days to read it all. I may even start back tomorrow reading some. But hey, I don't know what other news is going to come up today because so much is happening. Donald Trump continue putting out tweets to try to convince y'all that everything is a lie in this indictment. It's not lies. It's not lies. His own cabinet will be testifying against him. That's how powerful and strong this indictment is that Jack Smith has against the defendant, Donald Trump. Thank you all. Thank you for supporting me. We got an amazing day coming November 5th. Here in Georgia, I think early voting is on October the 15th. I will be early voting. If I don't go that exact date, I will still early vote. I truly believe that we got this in the bag. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. We got this. What I do know that Donald Trump will try to cheat again. It is in his blood, his DNA, to be a cheater. Kamala Harris is out there putting in the work, and she will win because she has put in the work. Thank you for that like. I just saw somebody else gave me a like. Come on, give me more likes, y'all. Come on, I worked hard today. I've worked so hard, my throat hurts. My mouth kept getting dry. My throat is dry. Come on, give me some likes before y'all leave out of my chat. Hit that like button. I read parts of that indictment and my throat is so dry. Do the right thing by me. Support me and hit that like button. Come on, do the right thing. Hit that like button before you leave up out here. Thank you. I encourage you all to early vote. And if you can't, vote November the 5th. Don't leave that line. No matter what is happening, stay in line. And whoever gave me that super chat, I thank you all. I thank you. God bless each and every last one of y'all. Good night, and I love you all. No matter who you're voting for, I love you all. Bye.